Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofit leadership and sustainability, where the passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact are celebrated. With your host, Jarrett Ransom, get ready to explore inspiring stories and game changing strategies of nonprofit leaders from across the sector. In this season, we're focusing on critical management challenges that are key to the long-term success of nonprofit organizations. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense, in-depth conversations with the real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and learn how to navigate and overcome the challenges that help build stronger, more sustainable organizations. Now, let's dive in and harness the collective power of our nonprofit networks to create lasting change.
Welcome back, my fellow nonprofit nerds. I am thrilled to share with you part 2 of my conversation with Mary Crogan of Bloomerang. In this episode, Mary shares 2 very powerful customer case studies that I think you are going to enjoy hearing. They brought me hope, and I think that they're going to do the exact same for you. Mary invites us not to pull back during these difficult times. Instead, she encourages us to lean in and to boldly tell our story. She reminds us that donors do, in fact, want to hear from us, and that what they value most is trust and transparency. This is the continuation of our initial conversation, so grab the notes you took from the last episode and get ready to add even more. As always, Mary delivers an abundance of practical, actionable strategies. She lives fully in an abundance mindset and encourages all of us to embrace that same perspective. Thank you to Bloomerang for being this season's sponsor, and to Mary for joining me in this inspirational conversation. So I'm really curious how you and your team at Bloomerang, because again, you have the best privilege of working with so many amazing critical missions around the globe, but how should nonprofits begin to adapt to build stronger, more resilient donor relationships as we see this landscape change and that individual focus?
Focusing and thinking about the relationship with the donor is at the heart of all of this, and it's critical to growth. You can't just think of it as a one-time transaction, right? Building these relationships is so important, especially like you said, with these younger and mid-level donors. I have two 20-somethings, and I see the shift in the dynamic in terms of how they support the causes that they hold near and dear, and meeting them where they are is really important. I think, one thing practically, cultivating recurring gifts. Even though if it's a modest monthly contributions, those can accumulate into really meaningful, predictable revenue and help bridge, funding gaps that might emerge during the course of, let's say, a fiscal year, a calendar year. Donors who give recurring gifts, they are looking for, something that's easy ways to enroll and to give. They want regular updates. They want to have a sense of the personal impact that their contribution, whether it's time, talent, or dollars, that is having, and you need to create that for them. Engaging these next gen donors, these younger donors, they like I said, they want to have and they seek out real time impact. We have to prioritize being transparent and creating accessibility through digital platforms like I just said, because their expectations, you got to remember, this next generation, these young adults that are coming onto the scene for these organizations, they've grown up in an environment where they don't know what it means to write a check. They have no idea.
They don't even know how.
Don't even get me started. It's a digital first experience for them, and you need to meet them where they are. And we talk a lot about that in the industry. I think there's another really interesting opportunity when it comes to DAPs. It's a growing source of funding, and again, well positioned, like the recurring gifts, to fill funding gaps, right? Should be part of that foundation that you build, that layered sources. DAF donors are typically repeat donors. They're strategic givers. They're making very conscious choices and decisions about where they invest. And that makes them, ideal for building, again, a sustainable funding pipeline. Financial transparency is also important here, and a really small but meaningful shift is being proactive and transparent about what your organization needs financially. We encourage that don't wait for a crisis. Don't wait for a crisis. Tell donors what their past support has allowed you to achieve and what is at risk if that support doesn't continue. They want to understand how their dollars are protecting impact, right? And I think tied into that, there's an impact report gap. There is a significant missed opportunity here for nonprofits when it comes to communication. Research has shown 65% of donors have said they want frequent impact readouts, but only 36% of nonprofits are providing that. And sometimes people hear, nonprofits that are listening, like, oh my God, an impact report, that's a 20-page document that we have to produce. And we just don't have, it doesn't have to be this big formalized thing. It can be a simple email talking about how recent donations or recent contribution helped your organization serve underprivileged kids who are battling hunger, how you were able to ensure that 25 kids have been able to go to bed at night without an empty stomach. It's just telling those stories and talking about the impact their contributions are having. And you can do that in a simple email. You can do that in a monthly newsletter, whatever it might be. But that's a real gap, and filling that gap with that consistent communication can really build trust and help build that donor loyalty.
I was going to ask, when you say frequent, how might we define that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of different viewpoints on what frequent is. I come from the school where it's you ask, you think, you report, you repeat, right? And that's the cycle. So it's built into the cycle naturally. You're asking for donations, you're thanking them, you're reporting exactly what the donation did, and then you're repeating that cycle. So I actually today got a mid-year impact report. So it's funny you say that.
Oh, interesting. That's great.
Did.
And that's a great place to innovate and test. Do some A/B testing. See, if you're reporting out on outcomes on a monthly basis versus a quarterly basis, are you seeing a lift in the frequency of donations, the amount of donations, and what have you? That's a great place to innovate and test.
Yeah. So frequent, are we thinking quarterly? If we usually do an annual, are we thinking monthly? You mentioned newsletter. Is that the cadence? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is that, let's say today you're doing, once a year. Hey, why don't you try and test doing something on a quarterly basis?
Yeah.
For 2026, part of you've set out your fundraising goal. Hopefully it's a double-digit growth goal, and you talked about your strategy, and you've done your, start, stop, continue. And one of the things you're going to start is testing, and test how frequently you are doing your readouts and demonstrating, communicating impact with your donors. And you could even segment your donor base and do some concurrent testing. This group may get something every month. This group may get something every quarter. And this is our control group. They're going to hear from us once a year, like we've done in the past, and run that and see what kind of results you get.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I just helped an organization. They had events in, let me think of the dates. I think it was May, maybe April and May. and they had sent like a standard acknowledgement, right? And then didn't really report on the amount that was raised and how those dollars have helped since the event. So now it's been, we'll just say for easy math, roughly 6 months. So I helped them create an email specific to those events, which went directly to that audience, right? Since this event in April, X amount of dollars, have supported X amount of programs, X amount of achievements, X amount of fill in the blank, right? And then we did that for the other event that was in May with the intention, Mary, that guess what? Those events are coming up again in 2026, right? And we want to make sure that we're not only sending an invite and asking them to give again, but I thought, a 6-month touch point, I think we now have the pledged dollars come in, so they're actuals, right? And we can report on that. And I just share that as an example too, because as we're looking at tangible, there's so many different ways I think to do this.
Oh, 100%. And that is a great example. I'm excited that you share that. That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, good. Okay. I'm really curious for some more examples, and in particular, examples as it relates to what I love about Bloomerang is not only just your platform, but the stories of the clients, the nonprofits that you're serving. And so there's always fantastic stories that have been successful, of what's worked. And these organizations are so very generous in telling, I'm going to say, the recipe, right? Like, this is what we did, this is what happened, and this is what we recommend you do. So I'm curious if you can think of an example of a nonprofit that has successfully embraced, as you talked about, these recurring giving levels, maybe the DAFs, those donor advised funds, or just those small efficiency changes that created these larger, big ripple effects that we're seeing. I know you've given us some great tips and techniques on how to do this, but is there an example or a case study that comes to mind?
Yeah. And, our customers and their stories, it's what energizes us.
Yes,
We've
it
been very,
energizes me.
yeah, and we've been very fortunate. Our customers have been, realizing next level impact in lots of different ways. I'll start by saying this. It goes back to our belief in abundance, right? It's why we built the giving platform. Let me be clear. We didn't want to just create another fundraising tool. There's plenty of standalone fundraising tools out there. Our CEO, Dennis Foy, he states this really well. We wanted to help nonprofits escape this hamster wheel they're on that resets with every campaign or event. We see them doing incredible work, but without that connective tissue between all of their fundraising efforts and their donor engagement and management and everything that they're doing on the volunteer side too, and their efforts couldn't compound, right, for growth. So we designed the platform to really close that infrastructure gap, and by unifying the data and making every interaction part of this sort of continuous relationship, like I talked about, and help them turn the generosity that they're receiving into lasting growth. And it's really about unlocking what's already there and waiting to be activated. So our clients overall, like I said, have been really successful. They're seeing 47% increases in their revenue. They're achieving constituent growth year over year of about 12%. So they're growing their databases, and their volunteer participation rate is up by about 35%, which is essential to certain nonprofits that rely so heavily on their volunteers. So really gratifying, and it's really proving that the more connections and insight can translate in really directly into that impact. But to answer your question more directly, there's a couple of customers. One recently. It's the Colorado Music Festival and Center for Musical Arts, and they're located in Boulder. And they have utilized the giving platform to really segment their donors based on interests, and tap into and really think about the relationships that they want to create, and using the platform to deliver really personalized engagement and ongoing communication and telling their stories, and managing and building those relationships. And in doing that, they've been able to increase their donor retention. They're up at about 63% now. And
Wow.
yeah, and they've seen their individual giving, again, it's all about those individual donors, it's gone up 20%. So really gratifying, really powerful story, and seeing sort of what they're able to achieve by utilizing the platform and really shifting their mindset and thinking about growth, and tapping into that abundance.
Uh,
There's another customer near and dear to my heart. We just did a video with them. It's the Brother Wolf Animal Rescue down in Asheville, and they've used all of the data-driven insights, again, to improve their donor retention. I think they're at about 61%. And same thing, really personalizing their outreach. And as we know, they have a horrible hurricane not long ago, and it wiped them out completely. And they were able to use the platform and engage, and really tell their story in a really compelling way, and talk about the impact donors can have, and helping them save the lives of all of these animals. Who doesn't love dogs and cats? But they raised over $1 million from that campaign using the platform, and they were able to uncover over 5,000 new donors. So they grew their database.
that is amazing.
Yeah, and it meant that they could rebuild after the hurricane, which is just fantastic. So there's lots of stories for nonprofits uh, uh, of all different types, and how they are leaning into this growth mindset, and looking at how can we use the platform and technology to support us achieving these growth goals that we're setting for ourselves.
Oh my gosh. Again, that gives me hope. It gives
Yes,
me,
yes,
possibility.
and yes, absolutely. And there's hundreds of stories like that.
Yeah.
Profits are achieving amazing things, and it really does. If you're in that hamster wheel, right,
Mhm.
that Dennis talks about, if from a mindset you're in survival mode, and I'm not diminishing the impact that macro world things are having on us, but if you can pull yourself out of that and start to step towards that abundance mindset, your
Yeah.
organization can achieve some amazing things.
Well, I think that leads us right into the next question, truly, Mary, is around there are so many organizations right now that are absolutely operating on extremely thin margins. And what would you say to these leaders? How might we balance, right, the short time survival? Because the reality is many of us are in that survival mindset, but also how do we balance it with building this abundance and prosperity consciousness and this long-term sustainability? Um, how do we do that? Like, how do we even begin to do this?
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. There's no question about that. I think for that short term, I think there's really two opportunities that can really help get you out of that survival mode, right? And that mindset. I think working to close your current gaps and thinking about that diversification. But again, I go back to that, stop, start, continue. You need to reprioritize your activities. If you're struggling, like you said, if if you're dealing with thin margins and survival, okay, what are you doing that works? Keep doing it. If something isn't working, just stop doing it. You don't have the luxury of continuing to do things that aren't going to sustain you. So really just um, being aggressive in your thought process and in your strategy and your thinking about how to reprioritize. And I can't say this enough. don't pull back. You need to proactively share your stories and speak to your donors and connect with them, and not just wait for a crisis situation. Tell those stories, get them engaged, help them understand what you're trying to achieve, and show them the way as far as being part of that work. From a long-term sustainability standpoint, the diversification of revenue is a given, and I'm sure that's on the mind of every nonprofit, but it's really crucial to this that you recognize your donors not just as one-time contributors, but think of them as partners. Think of them as long-term partners. And build your fundraising on relationship building. Make that the central tenet of your strategy versus isolated campaigns. You want to be thinking about every single interaction, whether it's event participation or bidding at an auction or involved in a peer-to-peer campaign or responding to an email outreach. You want to pull all of those interactions together to really paint a compelling and detailed picture of who your donors are, and then use your tools to group like-minded individuals, whether it's in their behaviors or how they're communicating with you, and speak to them in a way that is really meaningful to them. And if you can do that and do that on a consistent basis and cadence, you're going to build those relationships. You're going to see that support there, and it's going to become foundational and part of your layered approach to supporting the organization.
I agree. And you've pulled on this theme in our conversation: trust and transparency and generosity, right? And I agree. I think it comes with both trust and transparency. So recurring themes in what we've talked about in the conversation. But I also think, Mary, that so many organizations continue to struggle with this, continue to struggle with being transparent in their stories or transparent in their financials. I've worked with organizations that have months of runway left. That's all we're saying, months, right? And they are at the point where, do we consider an M&A? Do we consider a merger and acquisition? What is the best strategic partnership for us to go forward? And that's not everyone's story, but I do know that trust and transparency is something that we want our organizations to lean into. But why do you think maybe some nonprofits are struggling with this? And if they're struggling, do you have one way that maybe these leaders can close the donor communication gap after hearing this conversation?
For sure. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about this missed opportunity. Donors want to hear from you. A lot of nonprofits don't communicate. And I think that is essential and critical. That's how you build trust. That's how you create transparency. And I think a lot of people are held back because they're like, they don't know where to start with that. And the key in this, and I find this in my own personal life, when you're approaching something and you're looking at it fully, it can be overwhelming, and that stops people from making progress and moving forward. You need to break things down into a crawl, walk, run strategy. For instance, like we were talking about earlier, craft a story, just a single narrative about how your donors have enabled you to achieve certain goals, and illustrate that by telling the story of your community that you're serving, and make it real, make it tangible, something they can relate to, and just craft that one story. Doesn't have to be a whole multitude. Just tell that one story, that one example, and then utilize that across multiple channels in terms of your communication. Highlight on your social media, include it in your newsletter, maybe do a short little video telling the story. You name it, bring it into your outreach and your engagement strategy, and take that first step. And you're going to see the result of that. And that's where you're going to draw your energy from. You're going to realize, oh my God, yes, telling the story, we've seen X amount of new donors come in, or X amount of dollars come in. all right, so let's take this now to another level. Let's go from crawling to walking, and let's do something. That's how you build growth and sustainability. And it doesn't have to be this big heavy lift. Start with something small and create a path forward for yourself.
I'm hearing another theme come up, right? Like I love I have to look at my notes. That it's the start, stop, continue, the crawl, walk, run strategy,
We like threes when it comes to strategy, whatever
and the
approach.
A/B testing, right? And so what I'm hearing too is take the chance, take these as opportunities to really get out of the norm. Because as you said, I'm just as guilty. We all get stuck in doing the same thing we've done over and over, expecting a different result, hence the definition of insanity.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
But looking at this differently. So I really appreciate that. And as we begin to wrap up this amazing conversation, part 2 of the part 1 that we just had as well, looking ahead, what opportunities do you see for nonprofits right now? And I know we've all heard this, let's work smarter, not harder. But
Mhm.
what are the opportunities that you do think we can lean into? Maybe it's from the themes that have come out of these conversations. Um, but there's so much hope. There is absolutely generosity. And I appreciate you sharing that. Is there, again, like, what is it that we should take away in this work smarter, not harder right now?
I think there's several opportunities here to achieve that. I think we talked about, recognizing and cultivating new donors. With this big wealth transfer that's coming, there's a huge opportunity to
Yeah,
engage with those next generation donors, right? And who want that real-time impact and they offer in return consistent and powerful loyalty. You can work smarter by identifying and promoting recurring giving to that segment in your constituent base, right? Um, Automating and personalizing your donor interaction at scale. And this isn't about working harder, it's about using behavioral data and insight alongside AI to engage donors where they are without adding more to your plate. And
mm,
and in addition, embracing this idea of scaled giving, it means smarter, more predictable fundraising
that's
built on
right.
these really strong donor relationships and automation. And again, those behavioral insights are essential to making that a reality. Um, Talked about the recurring gifts. I would say, make that a priority. That's another big opportunity. And I mentioned it a moment ago, you know, building on every interaction and not getting off that hamster wheel and actually building on every interaction and striving for this complete view of your supporters, and as opposed to starting from scratch every single time, right? And I think the common thread through those opportunities I just mentioned, uh, is the technology. Having a platform that unifies all this data, so every interaction is part of a continuous relationship, and you can see that that's really essential to tapping into all of these things and turning generosity into lasting growth.
Generosity into lasting growth. I just wanted to repeat that because that hits me in, again, this breath of fresh air where it is lasting. It is lasting growth, lasting possibility, lasting opportunity. Gosh, I know we could talk forever. I have thoroughly enjoyed these conversations that I've had the honor to have with you, and hopefully our listeners have felt the exact same way. So as we wrap up this two-part conversation, what is the one takeaway amidst all the other great takeaways you've already given us, Mary, that you want to leave our leaders with today? What is it you want them to remember as we go forward, hopefully in a generosity mindset?
Yes, no, I think the challenges like, the federal funding freezes we've been experiencing and the rising demand,
Mhm.
are incredibly real and disheartening. Don't be discouraged. We said throughout, generosity is not disappearing. It's alive and well, and it is simply transforming, and that there are individuals that are ready and willing to support your mission. It's just a matter of engaging with them. I think that the potential for growth and sustained generosity is immense and it's powerful, but it's up to us to really, kind of rethink how we connect with donors and how we build trust and create strong relationships that can lead to meaningful impact. So hang in there.
Hang in there and know you're not alone. And with that, I want you to share how people connect with you, potentially, Mary, but also with the team at Bloomerang, because I do want them to know you're not alone. You are absolutely not alone in this. And we, Mary and I, and the whole team at Bloomerang is here to help and support you. So where should we send them to find out more information about Bloomerang?
Yeah, 100%. We are here to support. Folks, if they have questions for me, I'll give you my email. It's mary.crogan@bloomerang.com. And I'm happy to talk with anyone that wants to dive deeper into any of the things we've been discussing. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And you can visit our website. Just go to bloomerang.com. And yeah, we're here for you. We're happy to support.
Yeah, go to bloomerang.com, check out the new brand, check out the new colors, check out the new fun, and also drink the Kool-Aid, because it is some amazing things happening. And again, for me as the nonprofit nerd, to you, Mary, and the entire team at Bloomerang, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is what our sector needed. It's what we as individuals needed. We need to have this reminder that generosity is absolutely here. It's here to stay. It is all around us, and we cannot forget that. So thank you for joining me for this amazing conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love always coming on and talking with you, Jarrett, and I'm happy to come back anytime. This is great.
Thank you.